Yo, what's up, everybody? It is Thursday, July 3rd, 2025, Independence Weekend. And today, the grass is still bluer. This is part two of my discussion with the man, the myth, the bluegrass legend, Mr. Josh Williams. My name is Corey Evans, and I am not a rock star.
My name is Corey Evans, and I am not a rock star. I am a caffeine junkie, licensed minivan operator, touring musician, and a proud American. Ride with me as I tour the greatest country on earth and talk to the real rock stars, our local legends, small town heroes, and those who bravely serve our country. And even though I'm not a rock star, I do live a pretty rock and roll life. This is it. This is America. This is the Not a Rock Star podcast.
All right, guys, well, welcome back to Not a Rock Star with Corey Evans. I am your host, Corey Evans, and I am currently trying to make a lane change on I-24 going over the Ohio River. And if you are from this area, you know that is a nightmare right now. But anyways, we've got another great episode lined up for you today. We've got part two of my discussion with the bluegrass legend himself, Mr. Josh Williams. So we're going to be showing you part two of that here in just a few moments. Real quick, before we do that, let me recap what I did last weekend. I had 4 shows. The first was in Tolono, Illinois, and that was a private event. And it was awesome. It was a group of folks that hire me every year to play their block party. As usual, it was a great time. We had a little bit of weather stuff we had to deal with. It was kind of on and off rain, but we got that figured out. It was awesome. I played at the Turn Lounge and Restaurant in Marion, Illinois on Saturday afternoon, and then I played at Honker Hill Saturday night. Both of those shows were great. We had huge crowds. And then I played at home on Sunday at Max's in Paducah, Kentucky, and that was tremendous for a few reasons. My good friend Paul Signa now owns Max's. He also owns Doe's Eat Place, and so we've been working together for over a decade. And then for me, it's always a big deal when the home crowd shows up and shows out, because I don't want people in my own hometown to get sick of me. So I've had a few of those experiences recently where I've played in either Metropolis or Paducah, and we've had a great crowd. And I know people think that that's probably not that big of a deal to me because I'm used to seeing familiar faces and these are people I see at the grocery store. No, that's a huge deal to me because everyone has been watching me in this area now for like 10 years. So the fact that they still like what I'm doing, and maybe it means I'm getting a little bit better, progressively, whatever, it was very encouraging. So I had a great time on Sunday. Every one of those shows were outdoors. I think I sweat out like 4 or 5 pounds over the weekend, but that's awesome. I love this time of year. I love the heat. I love everything about it. So thank you to everybody for coming out and supporting me last weekend. This upcoming week, I only have private events. I would love to tell you guys more, but I really can't because these are invite-only events. I can tell you where I will be. I'll kind of be ping-ponging back and forth throughout Southern Illinois. I'll be in Waltonville, Illinois, Carterville, Illinois, Mount Carmel, Illinois, which is kind of unofficial Indiana, and then I will be ending up in Campbell Hill. So all over Southern Illinois, but like I said, invite only. Sorry, guys. Next week, we'll pick it back up with the public stuff. I'll be at Outbacks in Hannaford, Illinois on July 11th, and then I will be half the way up the state of Illinois on the 13th at Route 45 Wayside in Pasodum. All right. Now make sure you guys hang around, listen to all of part 2 of this discussion with Josh. We're going to get into some really good stuff today. Last week, just to give you a quick recap, we talked about kind of the darker side of bluegrass music and fame, and quite frankly, just the darker side of life. And we got into quite a bit of that, really, because Josh is someone who struggled with different dependencies, and he's now clean, thank goodness. But we did talk about that. We talked about kind of his ascension, his progression from going from a small child who was watching Hee Haw and wanting to learn the banjo to becoming basically a prodigy on multiple instruments. And for those of you that saw that episode, if you'll remember, the moment Josh graduated high school, he had a full-time touring gig waiting on him. And then by the age of 23, Josh was playing for the queen of bluegrass herself, Miss Rhonda Vincent. So that was a great discussion. If you haven't already, watch that first. Go back and watch last week's episode, The Grass is Bluer Part 1. But now we're going to talk more about kind of the depths of addiction. We're going to talk about the road to recovery. We're going to talk about all of the great things that have been happening for Josh since he has gotten clean. We're going to talk about the guitar a little bit and how Josh practices the guitar. And maybe most importantly, we're going to talk about fatherhood, what Josh has learned now as a man with his wisdom and experience, and what he is looking forward to. So, without further ado, part 2 of my discussion with my good friend, Mr. Josh Williams. So I do want to talk about that. I want to talk about like recovery if it's something you're comfortable with.
Absolutely.
But I also want to ask, was there a point in time, now looking back, that you think all of that got out of control? Like, where you're like, you know, I'd always drink or maybe smoked a little weed, but there was a point where I started using X, or I kind of fell in with this group of people, and I think that was the point of no return for me. When you look back, is there a moment when you think you start to go off the rails a little bit?
Man, there's been several different times where I could see myself going off the rails. And I was trying to figure out a way to get back each time. But when it finally did get beyond anything I could have done, and it's the craziest situation because I was hanging out with these guys, and let me tell you that when I say these guys were some of the absolute best musicians in the world, I truly mean that. And to this day, they still are. But I'm talking about, like, one of them was a guy that was probably one of the best. He could pick up any instrument and play it, and his singing was unbelievable. He could sing you a honky-tonk country song with a real deep low register, and then turn around very next song and sing Back in Black just like Brian Johnson. It was unfreaking believable to see the range that this cat had. And the other guy, they were just fabulous musicians, like absolutely stellar musicians. And we were hanging out, and the three of us were playing music, and it was one of those situations where, they started passing this pipe around, and I thought, okay, well, they had mentioned in times past, come over and we'll pick and do a little partying and whatever, and that can mean 100 different things, And so my first initial thought was, okay, I guess we're going to smoke this cocaine. I've done that before, not that big of a deal. So, in my mind, I'm just sitting here just even at that very moment trying to rationalize and, tell myself, oh, this is okay, But anyway, so the moment that I hit the pipe and was like, what is this? Because it tasted unlike anything I'd ever had before. And I was told at that moment that it was crystal methamphetamine. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't want to be that guy, right? Air quotes. So I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be accepted. So I went ahead and smoked it with them. And I remember the feelings that I got, and it at that time did make me feel like I was playing great and I was on a level with these guys and all that. And I remember leaving there that night thinking, man, I got to be careful with this stuff, because, it was like, I better not do that again, because I could see myself liking this. So then shortly thereafter, we ended up back in the same scenario, same three guys, same place, same situation. We're sitting there playing music and whatnot, and the pipe gets brought out again. When I left that house that night, I knew I'd never go without it again.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's how quickly it got me. It was the second time that I used it, I was addicted to it. I was not going to go without it anymore. And, you know, for 2 or 3 years, that's how it was. But that was the first thing that had ever gotten a hold of me that I couldn't stop no matter what I did. You know, no matter how bad I wanted to, no matter what I did to stay away from it, I ended up doing it again. So thankfully, I lived through that because there's a lot of folks that don't, you know.
So what are the, and I am genuinely asking this, I'm not trying to be funny. Give me like a Cliff Notes version of the negative aspects of that. So obviously just being an addict, not being able to go without it. But I have friends who have gotten off of meth and they talk about the shadow people. So like one of my buddies will tell you he hasn't done meth in, I don't know, probably 15 years.
Uh-huh.
He still sees shadow people.
Yeah.
Are there things like that, or are there, like, after inhalation period, is there a come down period where you're seeing things that aren't there? I mean, what are the like really negative aspects of crystal meth?
For me, I never really saw much of the shadow people thing. There were times that I do remember, you know, thinking that somebody else was in a room with me. And my whole thing was I could hear stuff a lot of the time. And obviously what I was hearing was not real. But I never really dealt with the shadow people, never had to deal with you know, the whole, I know people that have sleep paralysis that have, you know, dealt with that. And I know a couple of guys. I think a lot of it depends on the chemical that it's made out of. And a lot of people will, you know, do what the red phosphorus stuff. I know that stuff is like real bad news. Not that the other isn't, but
I've never even heard of that.
yeah. So you got to understand that what this stuff is, for the most part, is it's all kinds of chemicals that are put together. That and I'll put it to you this way: when somebody turns a home into a meth lab, the home pretty much has to be demolished and a new one built on that structure. So cockroaches can survive a nuclear holocaust, but they cannot survive a meth lab, if that tells you anything. I don't know what the difference was in what I was doing and what that other is, but I had a friend of mine that was real big into using that form, where I was using more of just the, you know, kind of the crystal meth. I don't really know what it was. The difference, you know, was, but the red phosphorus literally had a red tint to it, you know. But I remember him disappearing a couple or three different times because of him seeing things. Most of that, I think, comes from the fact that you can't sleep. And I think, you know, you've got the drugs doing that to your brain, but you also have the fact that you cannot shut your brain off to let it rest and get the sleep that it needs. So therefore, I've had more, you know, like the visual hallucinations since I've been sober probably than I did when I was still using, just from being awake, like on long drives or whatever I've had to do during the time that I ran my own band, because there was quite a few times that I had to be up driving and whatnot, you know. But I think that's more of a staying up thing. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I never, thankfully, had to deal with any of that kind of thing. But like I say, I did hear stuff. there were times when the paranoia got so bad that, I was hearing things. I'll tell you what the scariest part for me was about a month and a half to 2 months before I went into treatment. My brain was so crazy that I don't have a lot of recollection of that time, if that makes sense. So it's like I remember arriving, and I remember the days that I had been home from being on the road and not having anything, so I wasn't sober because I wanted to be. I was sober because I didn't have a choice. And had I not went to treatment at that point, I probably would not have went. But when you look back and have no idea what you've done for the last month or two, that's a sobering thought. That's pretty scary,
Was there a point once you got into treatment where that hit you like, whoa, I don't remember most of the last 6 weeks?
Yeah. I mean, when I was in treatment is when I started realizing that was a thing, because people were asking, what I had done or where I'd been and all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't even tell you where I'd played at that weekend before I went into treatment. But, yeah, that happened a lot. But another thing also while I was in treatment happened because I was so down on myself, and I was thinking, hey, my life is over because here I am, almost 30 years old, and I'm in a rehab and all this kind of stuff. You can't really see much past that. And while I was there, I found out that I was going to be a dad for the first time.
Wow.
So that kind of gave me incentive of, hey, it's not just about you anymore, dumbass. Smarten up, sober up. You've got work to do. So.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize that. Wow. In terms of what made you initially get in to treatment, was the issue with Rhonda when they let you go? Did the abuse go on for a few more years before you got help, or was that kind of one of the catalysts that got you into treatment?
Well, I mean, it was a catalyst that got me into treatment. I just didn't know it at the time, because that was the first real blow to the ego, saying, this is not working. And here's your first real sign, since you won't take any of the subtle ones. Here's your real sign of this person does not want to work with you anymore because of it. And, unfortunately, there were some folks that, when asked, she didn't lie to them. I'm not going to sit here and say that she bad-mouthed me, because I don't believe she did, but I do believe that she told them the truth. And the truth wasn't good. Why did you fire Josh? Well, because he was using drugs all the time, and I can't have that,
Now, did she really work a lot to create a culture of a family, and was the band, for the most part, did it have a code of ethics or
Yes.
standards, and she really tried with management and stuff to keep that up?
Well, the thing is we were sponsored by Martha White Flour.
She's got a song where she mentions Martha White biscuits, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
She's got several of them, because we were actually, like I say, sponsored by Martha White, which was a baking company, primarily in the South. They were one of the longest running sponsors of the Grand Ole Opry. Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs and the Foggy Mountain Boys were sponsored by Martha White for many years. And they kind of sponsored other bands throughout the years, but they hadn't done it in several years. And Rhonda reached out to them, and they decided to sponsor Rhonda, but there's also a clause in that contract that there was literally a wholesome clause. We had to maintain that wholesome look about everything that we did. And, you know, having somebody that's, you know, high all the time and or coming down off of drugs all the time and, you know, AKA complete asshole, you know, there's that doesn't work, you know, and so that was just even more incentive, you know, for her to have to do what she needed to do because she wasn't worth losing that, and she would have.
Dude, I never knew that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Was there a complete turning, or I shouldn't say a complete turning point, but was there a turning point? There's this Maroon 5 song, something to believe in, 'cause I don't believe in you anymore. I think that's the one I'm thinking of, where he says, I'll wake up one day and it won't hurt anymore. And he's talking about, I think that's the right song, but that has always stuck out to me because I've been through a few heartbreaks where that's been the case. And I've experienced some pretty crappy things. My dad was sick, died when I was in high school, but I had to watch him suffer.
Yeah.
So I experienced that, had some traumatic stuff when I was a real young kid. The worst pain I think I've ever been through, besides just general questioning, like, do I believe in God? And that type of like searching, that kind of pain, has been a heartbreak. You know, having my heart broken by someone that I really loved more than anything. But there's that moment where you're like, you know, I haven't really thought about her in like 2 weeks. And I had a moment like that in 2019 because I very much was in love with this girl that didn't love me back. And that was my catalyst to leave Paducah. So I thought, well, there's really no reason to stay anymore. So I quit my job and started traveling full time. It ended up working out great for me. I can look back now and be grateful. But that was 2017. And then in 2019, I was on this crazy tour. I played 156 shows in 150 days. So I was just gone for 5 months. And I remember I was driving around one night in Forsyth, Illinois, which is this little bitty like Gucci village north of Decatur. And it hit me. I haven't thought about her in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so there was that moment, you know, where I thought, I'm completely over this now.
Yeah.
I'm
your aha moment.
Yeah, I'm over it. You know, I'm back to being me. Did you have that moment? And did it happen while in treatment, or was it like after you got out of treatment, one day the sun was brighter, or the first time you held your child? Was there like that moment where you realized, like, I don't need this stuff anymore? I'm back to being the real Josh.
Well, I think I had a few different times when I felt that, but I won't say that that was any of those were any particular moment that I knew I didn't need it anymore, because I don't know. I always saw things that would let me down. You know what I mean? And so when I was in treatment and I realized that I was going to be okay and all that, yeah, things turned around and I got a lot better. I got a lot happier, you know, and that's great. But, you know, then something else may not work out, or I would run into the situation of somebody didn't want to hire me for a show or whatever because of, you know, what they knew about my past. I had people that didn't want to be in a band with me because of that, you know. So, but ultimately, I still had those moments, you know, when I knew that things were going to be okay, and, you know, I had those aha moments. Like for me, I think the biggest one was the moment of holding my son for the first time. And I think what made it that way was the fact that the guy that was sponsoring me at the time, in, you know, my AA sponsor was there, and my two other sponsor brothers that he sponsored as well. were there on the day that my son was born, and we're in the room, and whenever they got to hold him the very first day that he was born, that was a big deal for me. That I wasn't in there. It wasn't just us. I had guys that supported me, and it just meant a lot. Having that moment of, wow, this is proof that my life is different. It's not just my actions that are different. My life is different now, And I know guys that still continue on that path even after they have child after child after child. I know guys that have continued to live like that after they've had kids. I'm not willing to do it. You know what I mean? Other moments, though, getting to go back to work with Rhonda was kind of a big deal too, because that was a big living amends I got to make.
Wow. Okay. So part of AA is like there's the 12 steps, right?
Mhm.
Now I'm familiar with this because I went to Celebrate Recovery for a while, which is like a Christian version. And when you make amends, you're supposed to reach out to anyone that you've harmed to try to make it right.
Mhm.
So for you, I can only imagine how powerful that was to not just apologize, but to be brought back into the family.
Yeah.
And then be able to be the best version of yourself with Rhonda so she could see that all that belief she had in you was actually warranted.
Yes. Absolutely.
Wow, that's really cool, man.
Mhm.
And I want to say this too. I normally wait till the end of the discussion to tell people how much I appreciate them, but I do want to just interject this right now. It really is awesome to hear you talk about all this because I've only known you as you are now.
Mhm.
So it's very powerful to see a person who is not controlled by these things, and you're not arrogant at all. I mean, so many people on your level would have that huge ego that you talked about that you had maybe when you were like 25. But dude, you are not like that. And you're very humble. When you were teaching me bluegrass stuff, you never talked down to me. There was no like, well, I'm here and you're here kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I think this is a powerful testimony for anyone hearing this. Like if you're struggling with substance stuff or you have a friend or family member, Josh is living proof that you can get past that and become the best version of yourself. So that's just a huge thank you that I want to say to you for being that kind of a man and being a good friend, a cool guy, like easy to hang around, but you have put in the work to overcome that. And I think that is amazing. So I just wanted to tell you that right now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it does take work. It takes hard work because the hardest thing I've ever had to do was look inward, and I remember the day that I checked into treatment and they came to pick me up and take me away from my home. My dad hugged me and told me that he was so proud of me. And I just looked at him thinking, how could you say that? I'm going to rehab because I'm a drug addict. How can you be proud of me? And his response was, because if this was me, I don't know that I would be man enough to admit I needed the help. And it wasn't, that's what my dad was proud of, was that in his mind, I was man enough to say, hey, I need help and I've got to do something or I'm going to die. So,
Wow.
that's kind of how it is too, It's hard to do, but.
Would you say it's the hardest thing you've ever had to do?
Oh, by far. And sometimes, it's a daily thing, dude. Like I don't walk out of treatment thinking, okay, I'm going to be fine now, because it's not how it works. You have to continue to do that work every day. You have to find ways to help others to get out of yourself in order to be okay. Because remember earlier on, I said, you know, I was the problem. You know, it was my ego was, as I said earlier, edging God out. You know, it was in the way. So I just try now when something is not working out the way that I want it to, which, you know, probably a good 50-60% of stuff that happens. It's okay. You know, it's not this detrimental, life altering big deal. You know, yeah, is something going to suck? Absolutely. But I'm going to be okay when I get over, you know, get on the past it. So,
And I think that's very important too, to acknowledge that you're not ultimately in control. None of us are. But when you realize that, and you realize that your responsibility is to humble yourself before God and to serve others, then it's like so much pressure gets taken away from, you know, your psyche. Like, you're not on the hook for everything that happens. You're on the hook for how you respond, how you treat others, how you use what you have to make the world a better place. And I'm so glad you said that, because I can't remember, that is one of the steps, right? Like helping others in their journey. Because I do remember that from Celebrate Recovery too. And they would always encourage everyone, you get to that point in recovery, now it's time to start mentoring other people that are not as far along as you are in recovery. And that's just a good rule of thumb for life in general.
yeah.
To always be doing that, like always pay it forward. And another thing you said, I think this is very important. Your dad's support of you and your family's support was part of the boost that you needed to finally make that step. So again, if you're hearing this and you have a person in your life that's struggling, you can be part of the reason that they finally can get over the hump. Like that love that you can show that person and that support can be what helps get them into a treatment facility or gets them on the path. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I do want to ask now just some specific guitar questions, and we're going to park in the shade. It's very hot today. It is 95 degrees as we are having this discussion.
It is a warm one.
So I'm going to find a nice shaded area so our cameras don't shut off. As far as guitar playing goes, you were voted, I don't remember the name of the organization, but 3 years in a row, the best bluegrass flat picker, right?
So it was the International Bluegrass Music Association. What we have in bluegrass is we have two organizations, one of which is a national and the other is an international. So you've got basically U.S. and the world. So in 2008, 2009, and 2010, 3 years straight, I won Bluegrass Guitar Player of the Year for IBMA, International Bluegrass Music Association. And in 2005, from 2005 to 2019, 2020, anyway, it was 17 consecutive years on the national one. So, and I'm grateful for that. You know, I mean, it's awesome that people liked me that much and you know, liked my playing that much.
So you were voted the best flat picking bluegrass guitar player in the United States of America 17 years in a row, and in the world 3 years in a row.
Yes, essentially.
And again, I got to say, the fact that you handle yourself the way that you do, did you notice, by the way, I backed up to stay in the shade and the sunspots moved?
Yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah, I think we're good right here.
Yeah.
But again, that's just a testimony to how much work you've done on yourself, that if somebody wasn't aware of that, they would never pick up arrogance off of you. But I have very specific guitar questions. So is this the kind of thing like, you know, like if, say, Bass Player magazine they voted Flea the best bass player like however many years in a row. Then it was like Victor Wooten. Is it that kind of thing, or do you have to travel to a convention and get judged on the spot?
No, it's a basis of your performance throughout the year, and a lot of it is, you know, who's kind of the uh I don't know who's like the top dog for the year or whatever, and that changes over time, and I've seen a lot of times where I would think that somebody deserved something a little more than the other person, say, you know, that might have actually won it. So you're not going to agree with it every time. You know, I'm sure there's several folks that whenever I won it, were probably like, what? Who knows? But um, it's not one of those things where it's like you're going to go in. It's not like a contest. So it's like it's for the international one, it's your peers that are members, voting members of that organization. That, you know, whoever you feel like has done the most work that particular year. And then for the national one, that's more voted on by the fans. You still have to be a voting member of that organization as well. So the national one is what we call Spigmas, or Spiggies, as we call the awards. But it stands for Society for the Preservation of Bluegrass Music in America, and you know, that's what SPIGMA is, and then IBMA being International Bluegrass Music Association. So the IBMA voted on by your peer group, and other artists could be just voting members that are fans, could be well, let's see, what's the other, I'm trying to think of what the other one is. Basically, like, you know, people that would hire you for shows or whatever like that, you know, like the people that put on the festivals, all that, you know, kind of the promoter end of it.
Right.
But then, you know, you have the fans that kind of vote for the other one. And, you know, it's very awesome. I love the fact that, and I've said this many times, you know, I think that I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world because I get to play the best music in the world for the best people in the world, you know?
And I think it's more impressive that it's not a competition, like a location where you get like a 5-minute performance, because that means they're literally basing it off of everything you've done for an entire year, which to me would be even more impressive to achieve. Because if it was a competition with judges, you could just figure out what the judges like.
Yeah.
Kind of like in an Olympic sport, if you're into diving, you know, well, you get more points if you do this. So what would happen inevitably is somebody would just train to do what they know the judges like, and it wouldn't necessarily showcase your overall ability. But if they're basing it on, you know, Rhonda had this album that came out and Josh played lead on it. Josh did his own project this year. There's live footage from such and such festival where he goes off in these 3 solos. Then that means you're getting more of a totality of what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And even after all of that, they keep determining that you're the best. So to me, that's even more impressive than just knowing how to score high in a competition. Dude, that's really cool, man.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. You know, I got to see all that. My dad got to see it. You know, he was still around for all of that. And the one thing that I wish my dad could have been alive to see was when in, I guess it was 2017. It was in January of 2018 is when the awards were. But it was the 60th anniversary for the Grammys, and they moved the Grammys back to New York that year. So they were in New York City, and we won a Grammy for Best Bluegrass Album. with Rhonda. But it was a band project. It wasn't a Rhonda Vincent project. It was a Rhonda Vincent and the Rage project. And she only has a few of those. And but because it was a live show, we all did basically. It's a live performance of what you would go see at a Rhonda Vincent show at that time, And yeah, so I think I did Freeborn Man on it, which was kind of a big song. That's the one Brandon at the shop always has me do. But yeah, we got a Grammy for that, and I wish Dad would have been alive to see that. I know he'd have been super proud of that. But yeah, but Dad got to see it, and it was always cool. And the craziest thing though is that one of those years that I won the international, I had to go up and accept the award in front of my hero that was also nominated against me. He was a nominee. Tony Rice was one of the nominees that year. And yeah, so.
That's crazy.
That was humbling.
That would be like me beating Eddie Van Halen if he was still alive. Literally. I mean, that's exactly what that would be like. Wow. So you went from, I know you don't like the word prodigy, but that's, in a very literal sense, you were so ahead of the pack as a teenager. The night you graduate high school, you immediately join your first band on the road.
Mm-hmm.
You make a career out of playing with the Queen of Bluegrass. You've won a Grammy. For 17 years in a row, you were voted best bluegrass flat picker in the United States. 3 times you've been the best in the world.
Yeah.
Heck of a career. Does any of that compare to fatherhood?
No, it doesn't. In fact, I've given it all up right now for fatherhood. I wouldn't say that I've quit playing or, gave up music at all, because I can't. That's just part of who I am, But I have left Rhonda's band because of the fact that all of my kids were of school age, and if I am on the road with her every weekend, I wouldn't have time to see them. And that's not an option. I don't have that. That is not an option I'm willing to take. So I gave up my position in that job and took a day job here locally, so I still go out and play when I can, but my main gig right now, well, for however many years, 20 plus years, my main gig was I was either playing guitar or singing or with somebody. And right now, my main gig's being dad. I work a day job that I enjoy with guys that let me off because they like music and they like bluegrass and they knew what I did coming into it. So they're cool about it, That's hard to find too, is finding a day job that's like okay with you taking off to play music, because most people think, well, that this shouldn't affect anything here, this is your job, that's just for fun. No, that's also my job, as that's one of those things you take off and you try to make a living, and that's still a big source of my income. But I've gotten to the point where I can make a little more money doing it than I used to. So, I go out and play a couple times a month, maybe, or even once a month, or a couple times every few months, whatever it ends up being. And it still helps me be me. And I still get to have that time with my kids that I can never get back. As long as I keep playing a little bit here and there, I'll keep playing. You only have a short time you get to be dead.
Wow. Well, I'm going to come back to that because I'm going to ask you a question at the very end that I think is probably going to have to do with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to ask you first, what advice would you give young musicians? if they're just getting started or they're still kind of at a novice level, what would you tell them?
Do not keep trying to play something you don't like. John Hartford told me one time, don't get famous doing something you don't like doing. You know, if you are not enjoying the style of music that you are learning to play, that's not the style of music that you need to be playing. If you want to be able to have fun playing the guitar, play the songs you like. Learn to play those. Find the joy in it, because that's what it's all about, is the joy. If it doesn't bring you joy, then you're not doing something right, you know? But find that style that makes you think, wow, this is so awesome, and I love this so much. Find that, and then work your butt off to become the best you could possibly be at that. And, you know, it sometimes takes hours to practice, but, you know, when I was a kid, that's all I wanted to do was sit around and pick. Once I finally got it to where I was doing it all the time and was good at it, I just wanted to pick. I would rather go pick with somebody than go out with all of my friends and go on camping trips or play basketball or whatever games might be going on. I would rather sit around and pick, you know, and I would do that. I would work really hard, you know, practice, practice, practice.
And what does your practice routine look like? And has it changed? Like when you were first really developing your chops, was there a routine, or was it just kind of, I'm just going to keep being persistent and learning new things?
Well, there was kind of a more of a routine then than there is now, because you have your things that, well, I'm still learning, so I got to practice this. It's like when I was taking banjo lessons, I had rolls I had to practice for my right hand, because, you know, when you play banjo, you've got your three fingers doing something different. So you have to learn these rolls, you know, and be able to change them. And, you know, that's kind of the same way with the pick, practicing chords, practicing melodies. You know, I would try to do that. Now when I get it out, I just, you know, try to play. Maybe sing a couple of things. If there's something in particular that I am working on, I work on that. I try to play it slow and clean, and completely from memory. And then, you know, if I get to where it's like I'm not feeling this, it's not bringing me joy right now, I put it back in the case and try again in a little while. Maybe it'll bring me joy then, you know. But, you know, there's a reason why they call it playing music instead of working music, because it is fun, but it also takes work, hard work, to play music.
And I think of it like this. You know, they say music is the language of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, man. It breaks down basically every barrier that there is: social, you know, economic, racial,
Mm-hmm.
religious, even like literal language. You you see the clips of Kiss going to Japan or Kiss going to Colombia and people, Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
But like with language, you know, you have to get to a point where you get past, when you're like a little kid, you grunt. Like, you know, you actually have to learn your words. You have to learn to put sentences together.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are typically the best communicators are eloquent on some level. So the reason you put in all that work is so you can then truly play,
Mm-hmm.
truly freely express yourself. But if you're a young kid hearing this, in order to fully enjoy what you're doing, you got to put the time in.
Yeah.
Because then it would be almost like me trying to talk to Josh, but not really speaking the same language. Like I would keep running into like, I'd point at things. I don't know the word for this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to I mean, I'll just say, if you want to be like Josh, if you want to get to that level where you can truly just express yourself and like vibe with the music and really just express your soul, make sure you have those routines. They might seem mundane to you, but they're actually going to lead to you having the most joy and the most fun. And then, like Josh is saying, don't do things solely for money or you think it's going to be more popular. Truly try to find what's connecting with your soul. And then every now and then it's okay. Like if you hit a snag, like, man, I just can't run these rolls anymore. Can't run these scales anymore. Walk away for a second. Don't run yourself in the ground. But there's some balance there, you know?
Yeah, you don't want yourself to hate it.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
if you keep yourself in that spot, why keep doing it? Because it just sucks every time I get it out. I get to this point. Well, then stop getting it out for a little while or something. You know?
Or just literally just rock out for a little bit.
Yeah.
Stop running scales. And another thing you said I think is super important is you always try to get it perfect at a slow speed.
Mm-hmm.
I had a guy that I was teaching one time, and he was former military. And so I kind of had said that, like, hey, our concern here is that you get this clean and you get it smooth. Don't worry about going fast yet. We're not doing this up to speed. Just come back next week and have it right. And he said to me, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I go, whoa, say that again. And he said, well, when I was in the Army, we did all these different types of gun drills and all these different things where you're supposed to pick up your gun in a certain amount of time and be able to shoot like an accurate shot. So they would have us repeat it extremely slowly over and over and over. But then you can literally just pick the thing up and go through the drill in like 2 seconds because you've trained your muscles to do that. And he said they would always tell us that slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so I have noticed that too, that if I'll do something like 200 times at, let's just say 100 beats per minute, like some Billy Strings run or something that, you know, he's just going crazy and I'm trying to learn it. I don't even necessarily always have to keep working my way up in speed. If I do it at like 2/3 speed and just get it perfect and just do it so many times, then all of a sudden I can just play it at full speed because I've gotten so smooth doing it that I'm able to speed it up. So again, if you're like a kid hearing this or a person just getting into any instrument, what Josh is saying is a huge key. Like, get it smooth, get it right. You know, get it right at a slow speed. It's okay to play things slow when you're practicing. All right, big question here. It's going to be my last one. What are you most looking forward to now in life in general? That's a big one, isn't it?
It is a big one. It is a big one. But, you know, I mean, I've taken the time off, you know, of the music career and gone from doing that full time to other things full time and still keeping that, you know, kind of on the back burner. But really what I'm looking forward to, you know, is just kind of seeing what my kids choose for their life, you know, because all three of my kids are very, very talented. Weldon has decided that he wants to do what I do, you know, so he's playing guitar quite a bit. He's my oldest. He's 14. So he's really big into the playing guitar, playing banjo right now. He loves bluegrass. Whitley, my daughter, she's 11, and she is one of the best artists I've ever seen. She can draw really well. She can paint. She's actually a very good singer. I like to, when we're driving somewhere in the car, a lot of times she'll sit right directly behind me, so I'll turn on something by Carrie Underwood or something like that, and I'll just have it just loud enough to where she can hear it, but just quiet enough to where I can hear her over the singing when she sings. And then Gus, my youngest, in fact, today that we're cutting this is his birthday. He is 9 years old today, and he has what I believe to be perfect pitch. If you hear something on the radio, a bunch of times, and then you decide to start singing it yourself, he'll say, no, that's the wrong key.
Wow.
It's, you're supposed to sing it higher. He knows exactly where it's supposed to be, and he's learning guitar and stuff. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he grows up to be an actor, because he has that, the ability to memorize movies and the way that they act out scenes, and he doesn't get embarrassed, by things. It's just, he's just, what I'm really hoping for is that, they all get to be, famous. Weldon will be a famous musician, and Whitley will be a famous painter, and Gus will be a famous actor, and they can all take care of Daddy.
Well, I got to say one more time, man, I appreciate you. I just appreciate the way you've treated me. And I had to put the bluegrass lessons on hold because I'm working on this album and playing so many shows. And then we started this podcast. And so I don't know how many hours a week I worked. I mean, it's probably 70, 80. I don't know, man. So I kind of had to put it on hold. And two of my big goals, like as far as what I want to be working on guitar, are bluegrass and crazy metal.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if I'm doing both, I'm covering very opposite ends of the spectrum, but that's going to come out in my just normal kind of standard blues-based rock playing, because I'm more of a blues-influenced rock guitar player and country. I grew up listening to a lot of like Southern gospel, and then I grew up Pentecostal. We weren't supposed to be hearing rock music, but like country was kind of like, okay, sure, whatever. You can listen to Tim McGraw, I guess. Like, So my way of playing is more of like I said, blues-based rock, like Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, AC/DC, with a little bit of influence with like harder rock, like Pantera, and then I just love the kind of standard country. But I really want to work on the bluegrass stuff and the metal stuff, because I think it'll take my game up. So as soon as I can get through this album, I'm about to release the first batch of songs in a few weeks, and then there's going to be more come out at the end of the year. But I'd love to come back and take more lessons from you, man, because I just have so much I could learn from you. And I obviously appreciate that. I appreciate the music stuff. You got me on a good path of like, hey, listen to these people, do this stuff. But I appreciate even more the kind of person you are. And I appreciate just being able to hang out with you, and then just knowing your story, knowing that you were man enough to admit, hey, man, I got to change this. And then you did.
Yeah.
And you have been able to live out a redemption story. Your life is a testimony to people of what can be, what is possible. And it's just really cool hearing you talk about your kids, man. So I'm excited just to keep seeing where your life's going. And I'm excited eventually to be able to come back and learn more from you. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this today. And
I appreciate the invite, dude. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Well, thank you for everything, Josh, man. I really appreciate you.
You bet, Corey. Thank you, brother.
All right, guys. Well, once again, I got to say thank you to Josh. Man, what a discussion. I was riveted listening to a lot of that. Now, obviously, some of that is because I'm a guitar player. Josh is somebody I look up to in the bluegrass world. Obviously, as I've mentioned now on camera, I took lessons from Josh for a while. I hope to start taking lessons from him again here in about 6 months. But it's more than just the guitar stuff that fascinates me. I am so encouraged to see a person who, A, can admit, yeah, I took the wrong path. I made decisions that were bad. But then they put in the necessary work to recover. And it wasn't just Josh alone. He talked about his friends and his family supporting him. There are so many things that we can take away from that discussion that I just had with him that can encourage all of us. First of all, as we've mentioned in the discussion itself, if you are struggling with addiction of any kind, it doesn't even have to be something that we think of as an illegal or illicit drug. I mean, I would say most people have a sugar dependency, and that's something we kind of laugh at. But there are folks who are really, really struggling with their health, and they're struggling with dialing in their nutrition, and maybe they think it's hopeless. It is not. You can get better. You can improve. There are people that are willing to help. Maybe you just struggle with something like alcohol, which is not really socially frowned upon the same way something like methamphetamine is. But alcohol can be just as dangerous as anything else. Whatever it is, just know that you can overcome. And if you're a family member or a friend of someone who's struggling, please learn from Josh's story how essential you are in the path to recovery for your loved one. All right. Now, I told you what I did last weekend, but let me give you guys kind of what the Pentecostals would call a praise report. We did really, really well on selling the new merchandise last weekend. We did not have our hats available yet, but we sold a bunch of shirts. We sold some koozies. Now all of that stuff is available. So real quickly, let's just kind of recap what we got here. Toby will throw it on the screen for you again if you haven't already seen it. We have the Life, Liberty, Rock and Roll shirt in two designs. Two color options, I should say. Same design, but Toby's showing you that. We have the Illitucky Pride shirt. And then also there are accompanying hats and koozies for both of those designs. Now remember, the reason this is important is not just because I'm trying to make money. It's because we're going to be donating 25% of all the money that passes through our hands attached to that merchandise. Okay, so if you buy a $30 shirt, 25% of your money is going to go to area veterans. Area veterans, okay? So we're trying to really help the veterans throughout the entirety of this tour. And that leads me to mentioning my first sponsor today, House to Home Realty. Celia Robertson, she owns that company. She is a real estate mogul. She is a tremendous friend and mentor to me. I get her advice on any number of things. But she also has such a huge heart for veterans. So she is partnering with us for this whole thing. She helped us acquire all that merchandise to start with. She's really doing a lot to help me throughout this tour. And we're trying to sell as many of these things as we can because we want to help the vets. Having said all of that, Celia doesn't just have that great big heart and doesn't just own the company. She excels at being a realtor. Her company does a lot of tremendous things in Southern Illinois. So if you are looking for a home in Southern Illinois, you need to contact House to Home Realty. And last, but certainly never least, the man with the plan, Mr. Toby Glass at Metropolis Music and Media. Man, I sometimes I'm like, I don't know what else I can really say. And then other times I'm like, I don't even think I've begun to cover all of the things that Toby can do, because he is a multi-talented guy with a tremendous heart, and he's always trying to help people. So Toby is the kind of guy that if you hire him for any of your media stuff, he's really going to dial it in. He's going to make sure he gets it right. And I know that because he does it for me. As we've talked about in the past, weddings, you need, a DJ for your wedding, sound system installations, videos, promo stuff. Toby is your guy. So make sure you contact Metropolis Music and Media for all your media needs and ask for Toby Glass. All right, lastly, let me tell you about next week's episode. This is going to be a doozy. I am going to talk to my cousin Andy, who, aside from just being a really good person and a cool guy, he was a government contractor in the Air Force for 20 years. So he's got some really insightful things he can share with us. We'll talk about kind of how the government has to go about getting resources to people in warfare, the types of negotiations that go on. But also, we're going to be highlighting some things about our family. There have been several generations of Evetses who have served in the military, and so we're going to touch on that. We're also just going to tell some stories about when we were younger and about our home region. So you don't want to miss next week's episode with Mr. Andy Evets. Well, guys, I think that's going to do it for me today. Remember, even though I'm not a rock star, and I'm going to sweat my butt off now for, 2 or 3 months, I have a great life. I have a rock and roll life, and that's because of all of you. I will see you guys next week.